Hey, what's going on, guys? Killer6, and today we had another episode of the Bordercast. Now, if you guys have never watched the Bordercast, it is a nearly almost every week show put on by Mitsu and Tess, who both are really good at interviewing people. They put on a really good show. They get to the bottom of a lot of things for us. They're also members of the stream team. If you haven't already checked out the show, there is a link to the entire episode of this Bordercast down in the description below, as well as links to them specifically. In tonight's episode, they interviewed Graham Timmons, who is the creative director for Gearbox Software, and Grant Kao, who is the mastermind behind the Kaosun, one of my favorite weapons in the game. And they broke down a lot of cool new information coming out with patch number 1 for this month that comes out tomorrow. So if you're looking forward to some of the information about what's going to be happening tomorrow, some of that's included here. There's other stuff that's not included here. I'm going to shut up and just let you watch an edited down version of what I consider to be the most important information. Again, I highly encourage you to go watch the entirety of the show yourself. It is a really good show, and Grant answers a lot of questions, and I think that they did a really good job. And Graham, toward the end of this, make sure you guys pay close attention to what Graham says, because he talks about the second patch that is coming up later in this month, along with DLC 3. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.
So we determined that with this first phase of some changes to Mayhem, to lower the cap at the highest level at Mayhem 10 and bring that down to just 10,000% stat bonus for health, shield, and armor. And then we rebalanced 7, 8, and 9 to make that ladder up to 10 a more smooth transition between them, so there aren't so many like spikes in difficulty.
There's been a bit of an issue right now where builds being very specific and weapons being very specific. We know that there are some guns that are going to be adjusted. What can you tell us first, though, about the guns that are going to be perhaps buffed in a way, and where your thought process lied in buffing those particular weapons?
Yeah, so we were seeing homogenization at the top end, where strict burst damage was the go-to build or the playstyle for all classes. And they would just lock into these weapon types that would execute that burst damage as fast as possible. So we're starting to see like different playstyles just kind of fall off the board. And that is the antithesis of what we want to do. Like, we want to make a game where all weapons, as many weapons as we can support, and as many builds as we can support are viable in some form or fashion, so that we can support different playstyles. Now, obviously, some playstyles will be better than others, right? Like, that's just the natural state of things. But we don't want to deter players from trying different builds. I wanted to revisit the SMGs for a long time now. We have a lot of unique SMGs that fulfill different play loops and styles, such as the Ripper. And the Ripper is one of the examples where I looked at where it's like, well, if you execute the game loop here with this weapon, like if you melee the target and place the debuff on it and then you shoot it, you should be enacting a lot of damage. You know, you should be rewarded for this play loop. So we did that. Like, we dramatically increased the damage if you melee someone. What this does is, if you have like an Amara with a melee build or some other melee boosting artifact or class mod or whatnot, that you can enact that damage with the Ripper and then fire upon the enemy and gain the gun bonus too. And we're also making some changes to the scaling of formulas in Mayhem, right? So this is all like stacking on top of each other, these benefits to look at like, hey, we're now increasing the damage formula to work in higher levels of Mayhem. We're now promoting a gun that can also take advantage of the scaling formulas in Mayhem. And we're also rewarding the gunplay so that players can utilize this in Mayhem. So that's kind of like where I started. Like, the Ripper is a great example of that. And then the Vanquisher is another one where if you slide, you gain a bonus to fire rate. Well, now if you slide, you gain lots of bonuses. Like, the damage is increased, fire rate is increased. And we know there's lots of movement builds out there, right? Like, there's a lot of slide builds, there's a lot of jump builds. This kind of plays well with that playstyle builds. And also it plays well with the content that's coming up. So it just kind of all made sense for me to look at this weapon archetype. They touch such a variety of builds and playstyles. So the Ripper and the Vanquisher being, two good examples of like where I started with the direction.
Have you guys made changes to the Kaosun, which I know has been super, super, super popular? And are there other SMGs being adjusted also?
We've dialed it back a little bit. So that the damage, it's still really high. You still get double damage. We're not changing the core functionality of the gun, but we are making it so that it's a little bit less versatile across all ranges. Like, this gun was a beast. It was super accurate at long range. It was pinpoint accurate, and it fired really fast, and it did double damage, right? So we're making it now so that the damage has been slightly adjusted downward. It'll match the top end of all the other SMGs that we've increased. And we've also made it so that when you hold down the fire button, for the automatic versions of the Kaosun, your accuracy spread would now increase a little bit larger. We wanted to play with like a splash damage SMG, so a handsome jackhammer. We had looked at one of the fan favorites is the Hyperion SMG, the bitch. Generally, if they fell within a certain like playstyle loop, we've increased those. And so there's about 6 or 7 SMGs. And then the yellow kick was another weapon that was a complete outlier. That was more of a fix. That now obviously the community will take it as a nerf, but it was more of a fix in the formula that was accidentally set to a certain way. This heavy weapon was set to scale like a heavy weapon at the core. However, the math operator was set to scale like an SMG. Instead of gaining 1 point, I think it was supposed to be 1.8 as a modifier, so 180%.
Sure.
It was set to scale at 280%. Automatically, it gained 100% more damage than it was supposed to. And because the functionality of the weapon, it's a projectile that splits in air. Projectiles also received this benefit, and it doubled as they split in air. None of that was intended. The weapon's still very powerful. Average range, you gain 4 projectiles that deal maximum heavy damage without any kind of reduction. Typically, when we split a projectile, we reduce the damage so that if one projectile becomes 3, we split the one into maybe 50%. So if you execute it, you gain 50% more damage. The yellow cake, we don't split the damage at all. We just say, here, you have 4 projectiles that hit the target. The problem was we increased the damage when it's split. We've just removed the damage increase. That's where the yellow cake now sits.
Another gun I noticed that is getting a huge change is a personal favorite, so I'm a little sad about this one, the Sandhawk.
When I made it spawn 9 projectiles, there was 2 problems. One was, obviously, it does a lot of damage. And then 2 was, we discovered that the effect that it was using was causing massive performance drops. So critical that it could lead to real performance degradation in the game. So we had to literally remove 2 projectiles from the Sandhawk pattern. So we went from 9 to 7. So effectively, that is a damage reduction. But it's more so that it could secure your game's integrity so that we wouldn't have to deal with any kind of performance degradation. However, we try to provide greater quality of life changes here. We've increased the range by letting the projectile travel faster. This also serves our benefit too of letting the projectiles disappear quicker because hopefully they'll hit something quicker. We've also increased the lifetime of the projectiles slightly so that now it is a longer range sniper rifle. We've made the accuracy spread a little bit bigger. So with the reduced projectile, you can still see the hawk pattern. And also the projectiles themselves have a wide damage radius. So by increasing the pattern, we're giving you greater opportunity to hit things, especially when you're zoomed in. Obviously with the damage reduction, that kind of hurts. But with the quality of life changes, it will just be an easier gun to wield. Still going to be a 7-shot sniper rifle. And this one's a fast-firing one, right? Versus a slow-firing Jacobs. So there's trade-offs here, but it'll be like the Skullmasher, except it's a fast-firing sniper rifle.
So I saw that you guys are buffing some of the anointments. Can you talk about that a little bit?
If you look at the anointment buffs were done to airborne, the slides, and some of the ones that were just kind of on the low end of like action skill end and whatnot. So in general, we wanted to look at some of those anointments and just make them more in line with others, right? Like a lot of our players are focused on the damage anointments. We want to have that damage be executed in different playstyles. So now if you're in air, if you're sliding, if you're moving, you will have some of the same kind of damage output versus just like spamming your skill on the ground or something. We want to enable those kind of playstyles. And coupled with the next piece of content, you'll be moving a lot. Coupled with the changes to some of the weaponry, this all just kind of fits in a general thematic way of increasing player versatility across movement and across different play loops. With airborne anointments, we're looking at increased airborne damage, critical damage, and fire rate. So those 3 have all been adjusted upwards. And then with sliding, we have, I think there was a bug with sliding that it wasn't actually receiving the full benefit while sliding. It was like a scalar that was just not being applied to the maximum effect because it was like judging your speed, I think. So we just made it so that if you're sliding, big benefit. And then for action skill end, we looked at, I believe it was fire rate increase, and then the next 2 mag bonus damage increase, and splash damage have all been increased. So splash damage builds are making a big comeback. I think one just kind of outlier was like the auto bear active. That one, I think it was just a significant increase to the incendiary damage to try to enable more Iron Bear kind of builds. I looked at some SMGs for this content period, and even though I only touched about 8 to 9 to 10 or whatever, I'm still looking at all of them, trying to make sure that we can enable as many playstyles and different builds across all characters as much as we can. SMGs is just part one. Like there's, we have tons of assault rifles, tons of pistols, and we're even releasing more gear in the Takedown and the next couple DLCs. So like we're trying to enable more and more builds across the board and make sure that like if you have a favorite, it's viable. Like even if it might not be the YouTube highlight of the day, right? It's still fun and viable, and you don't feel like you're shooting a brick wall.
The next DLC with phase 2, you're going to start seeing action skill builds again. We're doing a lot there where different types of gear builds, because of action skill being on class mods, are going to completely change how some people even play Mayhem at the base level, make decisions about, do I play the gear game or do I play the skill game? We're excited as much as this release is the next one. There's so much more get out to the community.